What's going on, guys? My name's Chris. You're watching Raising the Bar, and today is part 3 of our self-training series. We've already covered how to find our macros, how to build out a meal plan. Now, how do we figure out how long it's going to take us to get to our ideal physique? That's what we're going to be covering today. I borrowed the formula that you're about to see from Vitruvian Physique. Igor has been absolutely fantastic in terms of the information that he delivers. However, the video that he did was a little difficult to follow, so I consolidated everything into a PowerPoint presentation utilizing the same formula that he did in order to show you how long it's going to take you to get to your ideal physique. So, without further ado, let's kick things off. First thing that we're going to be talking about is weigh-ins. All right, so obviously in order to track and know exactly what to do, we need to know where we stand in terms of our weight. So, a couple guidelines to follow here. Very simple stuff. First thing, make sure that you weigh yourself in the morning after using the restroom. We want to control the variables as much as possible. Make sure the waste is out of your body so that way we can have a clear, clean, concise weigh-in day after day. Now, second thing here is writing the weight down. You obviously can't remember it, so you need to write it down. I recommend a note application. I use Google Keep. Feel free to use any note application that you'd like, or if you just want to go old school with it and write it down on a notebook, do whatever you want, but make sure that you're writing it down on a daily basis. Now, step 3 is averaging it per week. Now, why are we averaging it per week? Well, depending on the sodium levels that we take on a daily basis, maybe minor fluctuations in carbohydrates, your weight is going to fluctuate due to water and a bunch of other variables. So what we want to do is take the average of the 7-day period in order to figure out what our weight is, because then we're going to comp that against the next 7-day average. So that provides you with a little bit of a better number to work off of versus looking day by day and maybe getting disheartened because maybe the scale went up a day or two. And I don't want you to lose track, lose motivation. So if you do the averaging, you'll actually be able to see that steady progress, hopefully, provided your macros and everything's dialed in and where it needs to be. So part 4 is kind of a given here. Make sure you don't wear clothes when you're weighing yourself because that's going to throw the weight off. I think that's just a given, but I'm going to throw it up there anyway. Now, a couple things to worth noting here. Stay away from scales with any body composition functionality and getting fixated on it. If it's all right if your scale has one and has that functionality, but just understand it's terribly inaccurate. So throw all that functionality right out the window. Don't even pay it much mind, because at the end of the day, really what's going to matter is your overall weight. So the body composition stuff, get rid of it. Use the mirror. That's how you're going to be able to judge it. In the previous slide, we calculated how much lean body mass you have. But when we undergo a cutting program or a dieting program, inevitably you're going to lose a little bit of muscle mass. I know nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants that to happen. And the goal is obviously to hold on to as much as we can, but unfortunately you might have to sacrifice some along the way in order to get to that ideal body fat percentage. So how do we calculate that? Well, first thing we're going to do is take the lean body mass number that we found in the previous slide. In this case is 160 pounds based on that 20% body fat. Now we're going to multiply that by 97% because you want to account for that 3% loss being muscle. So 160 times 0.97 or 97% brings us to 155 pounds. So based on that 200-pound individual, based on accounting for muscle loss during the cutting process, that brings us to a lean body mass of 155 pounds. Now, feel free to plug in your own numbers in here to get a better feel and a better idea as to where you stand in terms of your lean body mass. So now what we need to do is figure out what our goal body fat percentage is. In the macro calculation in part 1, I showed you a chart that showed you various body fat percentages. Feel free to utilize that chart in order to plug in those numbers in the previous slides. You can have an accurate depiction of how long it's going to take you to get to your goals. But now, we know where we stand now, but what about in the future? Where do we want to be in terms of our body fat? So what we have to do is utilize a similar chart. So I obviously borrowed from Igor here, Vitruvian Physique, again, so you could see the body fat percentages to give yourself an idea. Most people don't want to be below 10%. And the reason I say that is because from a longevity standpoint, in terms of being able to sustain it in the long run, it's very, very difficult. So I would recommend between 10 and 15% because that'll give you the best likelihood of being able to sustain it in the long run. I have a chart for women and a chart for men. Whatever you want to identify with and whatever your goals and your targets happen to be, feel free to plug them in. In this example, we're going to be going with 13% as our goal. So we want to go from 20% body fat down to 13. Feel free to choose where you would like to be and then plug that into the formula. Now what we need to do is find our ideal body weight, our goal body weight, based on our ideal body fat. So the way that we're going to do this, again, we're utilizing 13 as the goal body fat percentage. We're going to take our adjusted lean body mass, which is 155 pounds. We're going to divide that by 1 minus the goal body fat percentage. So what does that look like? In our situation, we have 155 divided by 1 minus 0.13, which comes out to 178 pounds. That is our adjusted weight based on our lean body mass coupled with 13% body fat. So you could adjust this. So if your lean body mass came out to 140 pounds, you could do 140 divided by 1, and let's say your ideal body fat was 10%, then it would be 1 minus 0.1. But this equation can be used interchangeably depending on your goals. But for our situation, for that 200-pound guy looking to be 13% body fat, the weight we're shooting for is 178 pounds. That accounts for the lean body mass, accounts for the additional fat. All right, so hopefully this is all making sense so far. On the next slide, what we have to do is figure out exactly how long it's going to take us to get there. Because oftentimes we want instant results. We want that instant gratification, we want it now. But having an idea as to how long it's actually going to take, I think just puts things into perspective and kind of gives you a finish line. You know what I mean? Like if you were running a marathon, you had no idea where the end was, you might get deterred along the way. But if I'm like, okay, you're going to start here, this is where the end line is, it makes it easier because you see it, it's tangible at that point. And that's why I wanted to do this for everybody that's embarking on a journey, so you can have that finished destination, know how long it's going to take, provided you stick to the plan. Rate of weight loss is 1 pound a week. Now, that pound a week variable is stemming from that caloric deficit we established when building out our macros. That 500 per day deficit compounded by 7 days in a week equals 3,500 calories lost on a weekly basis. 3,500 calories, as we all know, equals 1 pound of body mass. That's what we're shooting for here. Now you can be a little bit more aggressive if you want. You could go to 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, but things to remember, the more you increase the rate of weight loss, a couple things are going to happen. 1, you're going to sacrifice more muscle. And 2, you're probably going to be really hungry. So I think the slow and steady approach is the best. And if we even cut this down to 0.5 pound per week, you can hold on to even more muscle mass and it'll be even more of a gradual process. So it's up to you, but I think 1 pound per week is the sweet spot. Again, completely up to you here. So what we're going to do to figure this out, we need to take our current weight minus our goal weight and divide that by that rate of weight loss. In this case, pretty simple because we're using the variable 1. We have 200 minus 178 equals, divided by 1 obviously, but it doesn't really matter in this case, 22 weeks. We're looking at 22 weeks to lose that weight and get down to 13% body fat. If you're more aggressive, or if let's say you incorporate cardio, well, you could make this 2 pounds per week if we incorporated that caloric deficit of 500 calories and then added another 500 calories worth of cardio to that day. So now you've got 1,000 calorie deficit per day. Multiply that by the 7 days in the week, that's 2 pounds lost per week. So you can actually cut this in half. But again, bear in mind, there is consequences to doing that. In our situation here, we're looking at 22 weeks. So hopefully this is all making sense for everybody here. A couple tips that I wanted to share along the way is the weight loss process is not linear. And when I say it's not linear, I mean you're not going to start up here and immediately just start cascading down. It's you know, highs and lows, and it's just kind of this flutter, this little roller coaster that's trending downward. So if there's a day where your weight's up a little bit, or maybe you cheated, you just don't get deterred. Just understand it's the process. So it's not going to be, you know, steady drops all along the way. You just got to understand the water weight fluctuations, your activity level, etc. There's all these different variables that are going to come into play. So don't get deterred. Next thing is the cardio piece. I already covered that a moment ago. Adding the cardio on coupled with the caloric deficit will increase that rate of weight loss on a weekly basis. So use it as a tool, but I'd recommend against eating at maintenance and then just adding cardio on top of it. You can, don't get me wrong, but I think it's better used in conjunction with a caloric deficit. It'll speed up the process, work out your heart, you know, really nothing but good things to say there. Next thing here is that the calories, in terms of adjustments, I'm going to dive into this a little bit deeper, but in terms of how to go about making adjustments. So you're weighing yourself, everything's on track, and then boom, you plateau, you stall, you're not losing weight anymore. When do you draw those calories back? If you do draw the calories back, I would recommend with 100 calories, and make sure you only reduce that food after minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. So if your weight stayed consistent for 2 to 3 weeks, then we got to make some changes. We can either up the cardio by 100 calories per day, or we could lower the food by 100 calories per day. That's going to essentially create a further deficit to kickstart your weight loss again. Take those 100 calories either from fats or carbohydrates, or perhaps both. Feel free to go back to the finding your macros portion of the self-training series to figure out what it's going to look like when you deduce the calories from fats and carbohydrates. And the last thing, increase the cardio before restricting the food. The reason that I say this is because you want to stay in an anabolic environment. By lowering the food, it's not going to bode well for muscle retention. You don't want to turn into a rail, and you certainly don't want to become skinny fat due to muscle loss. So what I would recommend is steadily increase the cardio if possible, if your schedule allows it, up to an hour per day. I would not go over an hour per day, but if you get to that hour per day point and your diet and everything's in line and you're still not losing weight, well, guess what? We have to make changes at that point. I would take 100 calories per day away from carbs and fats at that point, if you reach that. But these are just some of the big tips that I have, guys, so that way you can stay on track to reach your goals. Feel free to plug your own numbers in here so you can get a better idea and depict how long it's going to take you to get to where you want to be. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay tuned for part 4 coming up very soon. And as always, feel free to comment, like, and subscribe down below. And with that, I am out of here. Take care.